SRP is excited to partner with Westmark for Hot Topics, a very timely and informative series designed to support strong and sustainable economic growth across the West Valley and the entire greater Phoenix area. Arizona's communities faced unprecedented challenges in 2020, and together we supported and helped each other navigate through all of it. Like many of you, I am really optimistic about the new year ahead, and SRP is looking forward to working with Westmark to recapture the strong economic momentum we had before the pandemic. Maricopa County is the fourth largest county in the nation. Economic forecasts and growth projections suggest that much of the state's future economic opportunity will be in western Maricopa County, with estimates that nearly half of all of the new growth will take place in the West Valley. That is so exciting. SRP's economic development team works closely with local governments and key community organizations like Westmark to recruit and retain businesses and to support the creation of good-paying jobs for Arizonans. Reliable, affordable, and sustainable water and power are key factors for businesses considering expanding or relocating. We've been delivering those critical resources to our customers and the communities we serve for more than 100 years. Site Selection magazine recently named SRP a 2020 top utility in economic development. We're really proud to be recognized for our commitment to help the communities we serve grow and prosper. More than anything, a sustainable and resilient water supply is critical for continued growth and economic vitality, especially in the desert. According to a recent report from the Bureau of Reclamation, SRP's reservoirs and water systems are resilient and well-positioned to ensure a reliable supply of water well into the future. We understand when West Valley businesses and organizations succeed, the entire metro area thrives as well. Please remember that SRP is always here to help. Thank you for participating today and for all that you do for the community and for Arizona.
Thanks again to SRP for, sponsoring this series. The goal of today is to show who's living in our communities, why are they living here, how they contribute in different ways, and why this is such an important thing to our economic development and as we grow forward. So Amy, take it away.
Thanks so much, Cynthia. And thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with the other panelists. There's a tremendous amount of expertise and great perspectives among us today. You know, I'd like to highlight at least 3 different trends right now in the housing market, particularly as it pertains to the West Valley. One of those is the increasing housing prices going on. We're seeing significant increases, and actually the West Valley is outpacing the rest of the region right now. So when we look at sales prices, so when people are buying homes, it's increased by at least 29% in the West Valley. That's higher than the East Valley at 20% and higher than the regional average at just about 23%. Our rents are increasing too, just about 20%, just year over year. And so we're seeing that, and that has an impact on people being able to come into the market. It's great news for those property owners. It's great news if you're selling your home. It's a lot harder if you've just been priced out of the market. So think about the retirees who are now living on a fixed income. They may not be able to afford to live in this area. That young family looking for that starter home, they can't find it either. And so that has an impact in terms of the decrease then of affordable housing. And again, West Valley is leading in that regard as well. When we look at the trend data over the past 10 years, the West Valley has lost 80% of its affordable housing, defined as housing stock at $200,000 or less. We're also, and so 80% lost in the West Valley. Regionally, we're seeing a big loss as well, but not quite as big at 68%. And so we don't have that housing stock available for people to buy. When people are looking to rent, such as in multifamily housing, those affordable units are decreasing significantly as well. So over the last 10 years in the West Valley, we've lost 67% of rents at $1,000 or less per month. And the $500 a month is just about gone, region-wide as well as in the West Valley. And then regionally, they're actually faring a bit worse at 73% of those affordable rents now being gone. Again, $1,000 a month or less. All of that leads to that third trend that we're looking at right now in terms of evictions. ASU and U of A did some great research during the pandemic to project how many renters would lose their homes as a result of the moratorium being lifted on those evictions. And they were estimating at that time that 20% of all renters could lose their homes. We're not seeing that right now. The Arizona Multi-Housing Association, I think, was predicting around 5%. What we're seeing right now is not a big flood, but rather it's a steady increase. And just this year alone, up until October, the West Valley saw more than 11,000 evictions. And that was during part of the year when that moratorium was still in place. So we anticipate more, and we anticipate that as people are losing their homes, it's going to be significantly harder for them to find a new home because of those increased housing costs. We're also finding that there's been a lot of work underway to stem that tide, to make it so people aren't losing their homes as a result of eviction. The Arizona Multi-Housing Association has done some great outreach to their members, asking them to work with the tenants to keep them in their homes, and that's been very positive. Also, local, tribal, state, federal governments have been working very hard to make sure that assistance is available to folks, to landlords as well as tenants, because we need to take care of both sides of that equation. That's keeping people in their homes longer as well. In terms of the impacts then that we're seeing that in three main areas. One of those is strained incomes, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about this. We're seeing more and more people paying for more than 30% of their income every month just on housing costs. In the West Valley, that's 167,000 people who are paying more than 30% of their income every single month just on housing. Regionally, it's over 500,000. So we have a lot of people who are vulnerable to losing their job, to missing payments, and to just losing their home as a result.
Is that 500,000 in the West Valley?
That's regionally.
Okay,
right.
So
the West Valley
County.
is 167,000.
Okay.
But when you go a bit steeper, so people who are paying more than 50% of their income every month just on housing, in the West Valley specifically, there's 74,000 households who are doing that right now. And regionally, it's 229,000. So they are significantly at risk for losing their homes. We're finding that the economic impacts of the pandemic are making that even worse, because when you look at the jobs that have been lost, 30% of low-wage jobs, $27,000 or less, are gone. When you look at the high-wage jobs, they've actually increased. They've increased by 6% during the pandemic. And so we're finding that people who are working really hard at low-wage jobs are losing their jobs, and they're losing their housing at the same time. So that leads to and contributes to that second big impact, and that's increased rates of homelessness. And so as a state, we're leading the country. We're outpacing everyone else right now in increases in homelessness. We have the highest percentage increases in the country for homelessness among single individuals, and just generally speaking, and the fifth highest in the country for families experiencing homelessness. Both of those are between 9 and 10%. That's statewide. When you look at regionally, we're even higher. Our regional increase is 12%. And when you look at just people who are unsheltered, it's 18%. We simply don't have enough housing to keep everyone safe and off the streets. We need more of that. We need more affordable housing. We need a balanced housing portfolio. And right now, we may not have that throughout the region in the supply, in the stock, at the price points where it's really needed.
So that's an interesting shift, right? Because if you remember, during the first boom, we saw that people were driving to qualify, right? And they're living here, they're raising their families here. It's a great community, it's a great quality of life, but now it's unaffordable for our kids to live here and to stay here close to us. Yeah. So that's an interesting change. The other thing too that I think is probably an uphill battle with that dirty word that I keep saying, multifamily housing, is for such a long time, the West Valley has really tried to move beyond that, beyond affordable housing, and to the luxury homes and all of that. So all of a sudden now, we have this need that is driven by all of these other things that you're all talking about today, but the perception is still, well, oh, we're finally getting there, so why would we want this? So how are maybe some of the things that you're seeing or talking about, some of the conversations you've had at the elected official level, how does that play into this in terms of educating the public on where we really need to go and what the challenge is? And before I let you answer that, I'm gonna state one more thing. One of the things that I think is really important to this conversation is so many residents, we've grown for the last 20 years, and we all want the nicer restaurants. We all want these different amenities for our community, but we don't stop and think that they're not really driven by single family homes or 1 acre lots. They're driven by high densities. And so multifamily housing is that way to get those densities. How do we make that connection a little bit better for folks out there?
Absolutely. I think there's an increased awareness and levels of support among elected officials throughout the entire region, because not only are you able to attract more businesses and more retail, for example, you also make your community more recession proof, because then you're not as dependent just on property tax. You have a broader tax base to draw from. And so it's just a healthier community to have various types of housing. We're seeing elected officials particularly coming together in ways that they never have before. It's unprecedented, the levels of support. For example, at MAG, we've been able to work very closely with our local and tribal governments to develop a regional homelessness action plan that was just recommended for approval with a unanimous vote by the city managers this month. Next month, we'll be offering it to the mayors at regional council. And so we're seeing people really coming to the table, and they're doing so in part because they see a crisis in their community, and whether that crisis is here today or they're seeing that coming in the future when their own children can't afford to live in their communities. And when people are protesting affordable housing, we really want them to stop and think who they're protesting against. Who are the people that they're protesting? And often they're protesting against having their child's teacher being able to live close to the school. They're protesting that nursing assistant being able to continue working in the office because that nursing assistant can work in the doctor's office and live not too far away. And so they're protesting the people who are important in their lives, including at some points their own children. And so we're seeing elected officials come to the table, one, because they see this crisis, but then two, because they believe in regionalism. They believe that we can do more together by working together, and we can achieve better results for each community as well as for the region as a whole.
And I think that that's definitely something that we've seen a huge change in, particularly in the West Valley, how the mayors support each other, the city managers support each other. So that's good news, just a lot of awareness that needs to go along with that. So Gloria is the executive director at the Housing Authority of Maricopa County. So first, tell us what the mission of that organization is before, because I know you've got a lot of numbers for us that'll really help shape the rest of the conversation.
Yes, I do. The mission of the Housing Authority of Maricopa County is to support communities in their growth and their need for affordable housing, and work with lower income populations. We work with lots of families, children, seniors, people with disabilities, and other people that may need some rental subsidies or need other assistance in affordable housing. So our mission is to promote that within the communities and promote it within Maricopa County.
So I guess, then, describe then, talk to us about some of the numbers. So what's the medium, the area, the AMI in Maricopa County, and what does that mean? When you look at the area medium incomes, that's where you start describing who do we serve? Who are these people who we're serving in our communities, and what can they afford based on those incomes? So there's a chart up that shows you where the AMIs are. And when you go down to a 30% AMI, you're talking about an extremely low income person. When you go down to a 50%, you're talking about low. And then when you go down to a 60%, it's another low income household. So you have the extremely low, the very low, and the low. And when you look at those AMIs, that's who we want to serve. These are people who need some assistance to create some affordability and may need some rental assistance. And when you look at their incomes and you look at using the 30% criteria as a housing cost, you can see what the rents are based on the chart that's up. So if you're at a 30% AMI and you're a two-person household and you're at $18,960, you can afford about $474 a month. Well, you're not going to be able to get that in our market today. That's affordable. And then when you get to an AMI at 60%, you're talking about people at about $50,000 a year, and they can afford about $1,200. So we really need rents to be in those criterias, in those areas, in those ranges, to serve a broad base of people in our communities, and to serve the working community, the people who work in our community, and provide the services that we all need in our communities. So as you keep looking, as the households get larger, you can kind of see where the incomes are and where we need rents to be in order to meet the needs of our community. Gloria, talk a little bit about, the push in the neighborhoods is we don't want multifamily housing, right? We don't want those people living in our communities. So there's, we talked about affordable housing a number of years ago. We hear the term workforce housing. Is that the new word, a new term for affordable housing? So differentiate that a little bit for us, because I think that that's an important aspect to the marketing and how we need to create awareness with our residents.
So when you talk about workforce housing, for us, the definition is about 60% of AMI, area median income. income. And that was on the chart. You can see that's a little higher level. That's more of a working community, someone who is in the community providing, maybe it's your fireman, maybe it's your entry level teacher, maybe it's the nursing assistant, the person that works with you at the bank. That's the type of housing we're talking about when we talk about workforce housing. There are lower wage jobs, but yet they work in our community and they need affordable housing. When we do workforce housing with rent restrictions, like we use private activity bonds or we use low-income housing tax credits, we restrict to 60% of AMI, which is the workforce community. And that means that it dictates where our rents are. So we have pretty much rent control in our properties, right? We can only go up so much, but it stays affordable for a very long time. For 15 years, you're under compliance. For 30 years, you extend it and you keep it affordable for an extended period of time.
Owen, so tell us a little bit about Dominium. And then, you know, you've worked obviously nationwide and you're working within the state of Arizona, Maricopa County, and then to the West Valley. So what does that look like? What communities are you seeing has the most and least of this type of housing serving their residents?
Sure. Yeah, so Dominium, as you mentioned, we're a national affordable housing owner, operator, and developer. We're unique. We wear a lot of hats. So we professionally manage all of our apartment communities. We also build and develop them as well. And as Gloria mentioned, it is long-term. You know, we've been in this business 50 years, and the typical apartment building we would build today will own for another 15 to 30 years. So it's a little bit maybe of a misconception about affordable housing. It's maybe not properly run, it's not professionally managed, it's not high quality. But when you're in this business a long time, you realize the benefits of building really high quality product. And what brought us to Arizona, quite honestly, we're talking about it. It's the need for workforce and affordable housing. We specialize in building it. And so we saw an opportunity. I've been here in the Valley all of about 3.5 months. Moved my wife and children down here to help run our Mountain West office here out of Phoenix to help solve some of the supply side of the problem that we're seeing.
So the Phoenix MSA ranks as the 11th largest metro in the US. Where does it rank by population density overall?
Yeah, this was an interesting thing I found, you know, being new to the Valley. Want to really understand, we're big on data and demographics. And so started looking at population density. You drive around, it's pretty flat. There's not much over 2 or 3 stories in height for the most part in the Valley. And I was curious, as the 11th largest metro, you know, in the country, where that ranks in population density. And it was shocking. It was 106th least dense or most dense, depending on how you look at it, which was just ahead of Muncie, Indiana, and Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So while it's a major metro, it's spread, it's far out, it's very low density. And that leads to some of the points you're talking about, Cintra, of density drives development, density drives services and retail, and commercial, and all those things that everyone typically wants in their community. But sometimes how you get there is some of that density. And that's where I think some of the clashes that we're seeing with HOAs and neighborhoods that are very concerned about what apartments might do to their home values, crime, or some of those misconceptions.
So Freddie, you're on the ground. Freddie with H&B Builders, you're on the ground. You've been building products from this affordable housing, workforce housing to luxury housing. What are you building? What kind of materials are you using? Talk a little bit about the quality that's going in and who's living there.
So what we're building traditionally in a workforce affordable environment is a 2- and 3-story garden style for families. And those families are usually 4 or 5 or 6 person households that 40, 50, 60% AMI. On the interior, those are actually look like luxury apartments. They're solid surface tops, such as granite, quartz, and luxury vinyl tile, shaker style cabinets. They look like a single family home that you walk into a model for. The only difference is there's some subsidy, which Gloria's group helps out with quite a bit. On market rate stuff that we build, it's essentially similar. We have a lot of the same amenities, with fitness centers, with community space, a clubhouse, a kitchen, a barbecue area, a top lot, all of that. So driving down the street, you wouldn't know whether that multifamily project was affordable, whether it was workforce, or whether it was market rate. The same folks who serve our community and our members and make our world go round.
So high quality amenities.
Yeah.
There's also, so we talked a lot about families and our kids and all that great stuff. What about our parents? So there's obviously, we need homes, and we need to make sure that we have affordable communities for seniors that was all different levels of income, and who knows what. I was having this conversation with someone this morning. You're doing the best planning for your retirement now, but nobody really knows what that black box of the economy is going to look like when you actually do retire and you are on that fixed income. I think you're in the senior housing lane also.
Yeah, so we, using the same program, built both workforce, kind of family general occupancy apartments, as well as senior age restricted. We're actually just finishing our first ground up senior apartment community in Mesa, at Broadway and Haas in East Valley. And just to show the need for this type of housing, we were over 90% pre-leased, and we haven't even opened the doors. There's a huge need of people not even physically stepping foot in the building. And for our senior community to make that buying decision without seeing it just shows. And people are moving from other parts of the country to that affordable housing, within the valley to that affordable housing. And one of the things we hear from mayors and electeds after it's built is how great it was for a community that folks that are getting priced out, maybe can't maintain their home anymore, have an opportunity to stay in the community, go to the same church, go to the same grocery store, and have something that's really high quality, but at rents that they can actually afford on a fixed income. And even in many of our senior communities, many of our households are still having people work. Social Security isn't enough to quite cover all their living expenses, and where prescription medications go, and all those things that get factored into your housing choice. And that's a very important piece, is building that senior product.
Can you add maybe how much certainty those seniors have long-term in their product? That's very, I think it's an important part for folks to understand, is the visibility and the estimation of what their monthly allowances or monthly expenditures would be.
Yeah, just like any affordable housing, both for senior and workforce, one of the great things about the program, and it was started in '86 under President Reagan, a Republican, is, hey, we want something that creates stable housing for folks. So it's an income test up front, but if they do better, they can't get kicked out for getting a raise, for making so they're able to have that rent restriction in place until they can save money and transition into a townhome or a home that they can buy. Same goes for our senior product. Our rents are capped based on incomes in the area. So they grow as the area grows. And so folks are able to afford their home. We can't raise the rents 30% like the market's seen over the last year. It's going up with incomes in the area. So it creates a very stable base and platform for our residents, those households that are fortunate enough to find housing and get through the wait list, get through the credit criminal background, all the things that you got to go just to qualify, show up with your pay stubs, get your employer verification. There's a lot of extra work on our residents to do that. But once they're there, they stay a long time, and they have that stable base to start from.
I'd like to add to that, because I'm really seeing a really high demand for seniors reaching out to us at the Housing Authority, where the rents have gone up 400, 500, 600, and I can no longer afford my rent, and I need some help. And we're going to see a surge of homelessness in populations with fixed incomes because of the rent increases. And that's not a good thing for any community or for Maricopa County or the state to start seeing that. And the Central Arizona Shelter is opening up a shelter for seniors in the West Valley to start meeting that need, because they were seeing a high increase of seniors that can't afford to live in our communities. And I described it as the golden years aren't so golden for some people. And we really, really need to keep our eye on the ball when it comes to who are we housing in our community and what's important to us. Because if it was my parents or your parents or anybody who's watching this parent, we would want them housed adequately, because they have given to this community many, many years of work and sacrifice to be here.
I think that goes into some of the work that Mag's been doing with the Regional Homeless Plan. And so I know, being part of that process, we look at, I think generally speaking, again, we all have our perceptions. So we look at homelessness as something that we can't necessarily impact or change, right? We think about the mental illness, the addiction, and so on. But really what we're talking about in this area is that poverty level, that income-based, that loss of income, the decline of income. It's more of an income-based. I'm living in my car. You know, I can't afford my home any longer. So now I'm living in my car. I might be raising my kids in my car, right? So what happens to that family structure? You know, there is no structure. And so then that's part of society. And we work quite a bit in the workforce space. So I'm always looking at, okay, how is our workforce developing? Not only from an education perspective, but from a family unit perspective and a resource perspective. So talk a little bit, Amy, about the regional homeless plan and how it really, what are some of the steps or what are some of the strategies towards poverty?
Right. No, thank you so much, Cindy. I really appreciate all of your support with that process. You know, when we started strengthening the regional response to homelessness just earlier this year, we knew that there's so many different sectors that impact homelessness. It's not just up to any one sector to solve this because there isn't any one sector that caused it. And so it was very important to us to hear from a variety of different kinds of people, and you really helped to bring in the business community. So we held 10 different forums with the business community, housing community, faith community, nonprofit community, among others, to hear from them, how do you see homelessness manifesting in your line of work? And what can you bring to the table to help contribute to some really good solutions that we can put into place regionally? And then also had a capstone event. In total, though, we're able to reach 1,500 people from all different kinds of sectors. We're able to develop 14 strategies that were adopted by a regional council back in May. And the action plan that was just voted on this month, and it'll go to regional council next month. The action plan is focused on three areas of activity that we can take as a region to address homelessness, because we can reduce it. We can do better in this space, particularly if we're looking in at least 3 different ways. One of those is, how do we work together as local and tribal governments? How do we coordinate our activities so we're lifting each other up in this space and we're able to reduce homelessness as a result? And so this has been really spearheaded by communities, by leaders here, right here in the West Valley and throughout the region. And so that creating that regional governance model is really critically important. The second area, though, is looking at housing, is creating that balanced housing portfolio and looking at what would it take to reduce homelessness by 25% by 2027. So we looked at the system flow, the way that people enter the homeless shelter system. How long do they stay? What are their attributes? What are their needs? When they leave that shelter system, where are they going? Are they coming back into homelessness? Are they able to maintain their own housing after they've been in shelter for a while? And so we're able to calculate that we need 770 units of temporary housing, so a variety of different kinds of shelter. And then we need 1,225 units of permanent housing. And again, a variety. And there are communities that are really stepping up to provide that housing right now. And then we'll be able to calculate the gap that's still remaining. And we're going to address that gap together as a region. And I'm looking at a variety of different housing options, both with eviction prevention as well as with the development of new housing, to bring people in off the streets, to reverse that trend that we've been seeing here really for the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. That third area then is really critical because it's partnering with you. It's partnering with many different sectors through a multidisciplinary response. And so it's working with employment, for example, because as Gloria said, there are a lot of people who are either experiencing homelessness or right on the verge of it, who are working, and they're working really hard, but it's just not enough. Mm-hmm. How can we help them to upskill? And Westmark in particular has done a tremendous amount of work to develop a really good pipeline for a good workforce here in the West Valley. And so you started that work years ago. We still need that work now, and for that to really continue. And so it's also working with the schools. It's working with the schools to help them to meet their workforce needs, for example. Mm-hmm. It's working with the outreach teams, those who are going out to meet people who are experiencing homelessness, no matter where they are, whether in the alley or the riverbed, and talk to them like, hey, so what do you need? And how can I help you meet those needs? It takes a lot of trust building because people experiencing homelessness don't always have positive interactions with folks who are maybe offering them help, but not really, you know? And so we have to develop that trust because the first time we talk to them, they might say no. Second, third, fourth, 10th time, they might say yes. And that's when we bring them into the system, help them to meet their needs and bring them into care. And in terms of the populations experiencing homelessness, we are seeing the biggest increases among older adults because they are being priced out of the market. They aren't able to necessarily go out and get 2 and 3 jobs to make that rent. And so we're seeing increases there, but we're seeing increases across the board. And particularly as people are being evicted, sometimes they're becoming homeless for the first time ever. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to call. And so we want to help them as quickly as possible, help everybody as quickly as possible to stabilize. Because once they stabilize, they can contribute really positively to their communities. And so that's what we've been focused on at MAG, the Maricopa Association of Governments, working with our local and tribal governments to reconsider how we address homelessness and how do we do this work better together.
You know, and I think to credit all the mayors, they really see, I mean, they're seeing it in their communities. And I know, you know, a couple of decades ago, we didn't really see that in the outer areas of Maricopa County. And when we did see it, we didn't really understand it or acknowledge it. And now you just can't deny it. It's in our communities. So it is everyone's role to step in. So I appreciate and love the work that you're doing at the elected official level, city manager level. Freddie, talk a little bit about, you know, you work quite a bit with the cities in terms of the permitting process and the standards that they expect for these products. So share a little bit about that.
So there's really no difference between the permitting process, you know, between a market rate deal or an affordable or workforce deal. There's more stringent processes actually with a tax credit level deal than there is with a market rate deal. We're held to certain HUD standards, certain state standards, low flow units, you know, low flow fixtures in toilets and shower heads. Many of the workforce and affordable that we build is LEED Platinum. I've done 3 projects in the past year that have all been issued LEED Platinum status. So energy efficiency, you know, operational efficiency. We want to take these folks and give them a place to live long-term with, you know, a very small utility bill because it's efficient, very small water bill, so, you know, because it's efficient. The projects look great from the outside. We usually, you know, metal panels, stucco, vinyl windows, steel stairs, multi-colors. There's no difference in the product quality. We have to build a product that lasts 30 to 40 years and be durable.
I think we might have a photo of that. Yeah, there we go.
Metal panels, you know, steel railings, lots of colors, landscaping, low cloning walls, marquee signs. It's a really, really nice product that gives people, you know, a sense of home, gives them stability, and allows them to focus on the things that are important in life: job, your family, raising your family, making sure they get their homework done, rather than scrapping, you know, for the next dollar to pay the bill, or you know, in the West Valley, as we're experiencing, you know, $400, $500, $600 a month rent increases, which is a car payment or more, car payment plus insurance. So you know, the product is an A+ quality product.
And Gloria, you guys have also standards and criteria that you have to follow too, correct?
We do, and they're prescribed by our funding agencies, where we compete for the local tax credits or we go on financing. They prescribe the energy efficiency requirements, the amenity packages, the community space. You'll see amenities similar to any market rate product. And like Freddie said, we go through the same design review standards that any market rate product would go through. And we do want it to fit into the community. We do want the community to embrace our product and the people that we serve. And we tend to have a little bit more amenities around what the needs of the residents are, like kid programming, after school programming, tutoring services for children, adult services, education, computer centers, business centers. Those kind of amenities are common and typical in our product.
Talk a little bit about the process. And I know that you and Owen have been working with different communities on the process of, you know, council meetings and resident concerns, and this is seriously a hot topic. It is. And where do you maybe need, it doesn't always go smoothly, right?
Right.
You know, residents don't necessarily want it because they don't really understand what's coming in, which is the point of this discussion. Elected officials are trying to respond to all residents, right? The ones that are in need and the ones that are in the council chambers in front of them at that moment. So I don't know, tag team and wade us through this process and I guess give some solutions maybe or lessons learned.
Well, you know, beginning with the community input and response and accommodating and working with them and trying to bring something that they can live with, because they're going to be living with this for 30 years. So we understand the concerns and we're working on addressing them. We've been very, very good at going to community meetings, meeting with HOAs, trying to address some of the issues. The things that come up is traffic, impact on school. We do meet with the school districts and talk about the impact on school. Where do we put bus stops? Where do we pick up kids? How do we have a relationship with the school districts to even accommodate helping some of their employees live in our properties has been some of the discussions. And what amenities and what things can we at our level in design and planning resolve that would accommodate what the questions are and their needs. I think Owen can add a little bit more to it, but we really want to be responsive because we want to be a good neighbor. We want to live with you here. We want our families and our children to go to school here. We want people to propel and do well. We want people to reach their goals.
And I'm glad that you're working with the schools. I didn't even think about that component of it because when you were speaking about it, Amy, that's what I was thinking is, the schools, that's a way of identifying those people that like you say, they're not going to come out and tell you that they're homeless. They don't even know how to react to what's happening in their worlds right now. And so a lot of at times it's students, right? One of the organizations that I personally and professionally fund is the Homeless Youth Connection, because, if you identify those students, and a lot of times they're not identified through them coming to the organization, it's more their fellow classmates. They confide in them and all of a sudden the need arises from there. Freddie, I know you're really involved and that's an organization of your passion too. And so I think that's great that you're working with them and maybe they're helping you identify teachers and, folks that bus drivers and all of that, but students, I think that's a key.
That's something linked to the future is displacement. As rents keep rising, children get displaced. And they don't go to the same school, even though a bus, school district will bus them in, it just might not be convenient. So we need to provide affordable options to folks in the community, no matter the income level, 30, 40, 50, 60. So those kids can have continuity. Those kids can continue to grow up with their friends and get a quality education.
And the Vilas Health Foundation right now is meeting with superintendents from throughout the state to help them to identify buildings that they have on their property. So they own the buildings. Can they transform that into workforce housing? They're getting a great response right now because all the school districts are seeing the need. They're seeing the need among their own workforce and they're seeing the need among the families going to the school.
So you've been to a lot of council meetings, probably more than all of us put together here, right? Or
I don't know about that.
I go to quite a few.
Yeah, they're not always fun, but it's part of the job, and it is fun in the sense you get the opportunity to build some great quality housing for families that really need it. And I think that's the end of the day. What we were hoping to achieve as part of our organization is just information, answer questions, get rid of some of the misconceptions, and really bring compassion to people that, hey, I'll never forget this saying. It was a mayor in Minnesota that was speaking to a group of very concerned neighbors about an affordable housing development. And this is a very affluent community in the suburbs. And the mayor said, what are you afraid of? A roving band of dental hygienists? These are people that work in the community. They go to the schools already. They're already there. They're just sometimes underhoused or have difficulty finding housing options. And so bringing that compassion and dignity to housing, that's one of the great successes of this program and the tax credit program. It's no one knows the difference. You never know if it's an affordable deal or rate. It gives those students dignity. When you can build in great communities like the West Valley has and great schools, now that child's success is on a different trajectory because of the zip code right now, the opportunity that they have to be in a great community.
And I think the message is that no is not an option. We need to figure out how to get to yes, because this has been a problem that's just been brewing. And we don't want it to get worse. We want to be responsive with the homelessness. We want to be responsive with the workforce in our community. So how do we get to yes? And I think that's what we need to work on. And we need to educate, we need to advocate, we need to give people the information they need, be responsive to what their questions are, and then give us an opportunity to show them. The results will speak for themselves. And we have a lot of success. But the results to get there and get it done and get it built is the harder part. But we need to be responsive as a community.
And I think from a resident perspective too, the community that I live in, there's more multifamily housing going up, and of course, I look at it from, the economic development lens, which it's going to bring those amenities that I'm looking for, those restaurants and all of that I'm looking for. But, residents have asked, is my, what's happening to my property value? And so there's been an analysis, and the analysis is our property value still continues to go up. And, people are so concerned about that. And I get that's an understandable concern, but I really think that part of the biggest issue that we have right now is just the awareness of who's in there, the dental hygienists, the teachers, the CNAs that are taking care of us and our parents, aging parents. I think that's the biggest thing. And for me, and I'm going to ask you all to kind of share, what is the one message that you want to convey to everyone? And the one message that I want to convey to leaders in the West Valley that are making these really difficult decisions is that you have residents that are asking you for the restaurants, for the top golfs, the cool things, the fun amenities for their residents. But what they really need to understand also is that comes with densities. Transit is a huge issue for us in the West Valley. That also comes with increased densities. And so the more we have those numbers, the more we can get these amenities that we're looking for. And I think at the leadership level, as well as at the resident level, that's the main message that I would like to convey. So I guess, Owen, I'll start with you because you're at that end.
Sure, put me on the hot seat. I talked about compassion, but I think really just the awareness that it is a need and that it's really high quality product. And it's going to take political leadership. It's going to take helping people to stand up in the face of some NIMBYism, in the face of adversity, and say, no, we need this in our community. To your point, Sintra, it's really important to have a complete community. And part of that means workforce housing. It means senior housing. It can't all just be single family. On the future guide, one last sort of data thing. So with Data Geek, of the 1 million acres that are vacant in the metro, for every 50 acres that's guided for single family, less than 1 acre is guided for multifamily, for future land use and future growth. So the problem's there, but we can solve it. And that's the exciting part. It can be solved. It's not a math problem anymore. The math will work. We can build this type of housing. It's just finding entitled land and working through the process. So it's solvable, which is the part that's exciting.
And before I go to you, Amy, and maybe this is a question for both of you, but I'm also thinking of zoning too. Is that really a part of the issue? Because I know for me, I don't have an issue with multifamily housing in my community, but at the same time, it doesn't back to my back wall, right? If it did, I might have a whole different perception, and we might not even be having this conversation. but I do think that that's something that the communities really need to look at is, where exactly is this happening? Everybody's concerned about their view. I'm always concerned about pergola. I'm very concerned about my view. So, is that also a component that needs to be addressed at the community level?
To be quite honest, that is the biggest roadblock to solving the supply side. And that's both on market rate and affordable and workforce. We get a lot more pushback on trying to build workforce and affordable housing that market rate developers do, but they're getting pushback too. And there is such little zoned entitled multifamily land in this market. It's very surprising when you start looking at the land use maps and what is zoned for multifamily or allowed to do multifamily by right. Almost all of it's built. There's very, very little vacant zoned multifamily land in this market. So pretty much every single apartment community that's going to get built, affordable or market rate, needs to go through a public process. And ultimately it's going to come down to the city council vote. And so that's the roadblock. It's HOAs are concerned. They gather up next door and social media. There's a lot of fear mongering out there about what that is and the impact it's going to have. But like Gloria said, once it's built, people are like, oh yeah, this is great. This isn't a problem. But it's sort of getting over that hump. And elected still serve their constituents. They're worried about their job too. So it's not an easy solution to come. And it's the developer can't say it, it's too self-serving, but it is definitely a challenge.
To piggyback on his, with the 1,200 units we need plus the additional 700 change in homelessness, it's not an overnight process to rezone something. It's a 6 to 9 month process. Then you rezone it. Then you go, you get your architect to draw the plans, and that's another 6 months. Then you get a permit, that's another 4 months. So we're talking 19 months before we can even break ground. So we're losing, 2 years essentially in trying to solve this problem that's not entitled.
So is that a general plan issue?
It's above my pay grade.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not going to tell
Yeah.
The mayor's.
Well, right. Yeah. And maybe that's a discussion, at the MAG-PEPI meeting. What do you want everyone to know? What's your issues?
I think we have strong communities when we have strong households, we have strong families, we have strong individuals, and housing is an absolute basic ingredient to that. So we need a balanced housing portfolio, and we need all people having equal access to safe, quality housing.
I think, folks just, it'd be great to understand who's in these houses and the demographics that fit your teachers who are making 37, 40, 45 grand a year, your first responders coming out of the academy, your nurses assistants, your bus drivers, your teachers aides, the folks that live in the municipalities, live, work, and play. And it's essential that they're close to home and their stability with schools, with municipalities. There's no turnover, that they're projecting, a great place to live, work, and play. And it's not bad. They're not getting a handout like so many folks. It's a hand up. Gloria can attest to this. As many of the folks that are getting subsidies, they work. So they're not just asking for assistance. They're receiving assistance because of market pressures that are forcing them out. And if we don't do something to help it, it's just going to get worse as the years go by.
My wish is for communities to establish a goal, commit to a goal, a number, and put strategies in place that remove the obstacles to get housing built. We're in a crisis right now. We need housing today. Everything that's new is 19 to 24 months away. And we have needs today. And what can we do today? And as we look into the future to resolve this issue? And if we could get our communities to commit to a goal, everything else will start to fall into place because we have some goals that we're going to try to reach to resolve these issues. And I know that's what you're doing at MAG. And if we could repurpose buildings, we could figure out ways to get housing on the ground quickly and plan for the future by improving all of the Dominion projects and Freddie projects, all the projects we have in the pipeline, because we have the tiger by the tail. And we have some land and we have the opportunity to move forward with the financing.
And one of the things, the main thing that we work on at Westmark is really setting the table for this community to be ready for job attraction and companies coming in, which is why we started working with MAG years ago on our workforce needs and making sure that we have a workforce strategy, a long-term workforce strategy in place. And then obviously the next thing is quality of life and housing and so on. And we're back in that cycle right now. And I'm looking at some numbers that say single mom working full-time makes approximately $18 an hour, which is $37,440 a year. That's difficult. That's difficult to live on. Average Social Security income, these are our seniors, right, is about 18,000 to 36,000, 18,000 per year per person, and 36,000 per couple, which again, my parents can't live on that. So it really is, such an important need that we have in our community. And you hit it on the head, Amy, is, start building strong communities by building strong individuals. And Maslow's hierarchy, right? Shelter, it's about that. So I thank you all for your time today. Appreciate you giving your expertise to the group. I know we've had a lot of technical difficulties starting off, kicking things off, but we have recorded this. It lives on our website for a good 12 months, and we will share a link with you so you can share it with others. And I really think that this is about getting the word out about who's living in our community, why they need to be here. We have a teacher shortage. We have an everything shortage, right?
Right.
So these are some steps to help us to solve that issue. And so we can't separate the issues. It's one big interconnected problem that we're all coming together to solve. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking it. Sorry.
And thank you to SRP.